The streets of Birmingham, England, were full of people today. Fans came from all over to say goodbye to Ozzy Osbourne. His funeral had just taken place. While the news showed the big crowd, the music, and all the tributes, there were many things the cameras didn't catch. Small, personal moments were only revealed later. And once you hear what really happened during those final goodbyes, it might change how you feel about the whole event. This wasn't just another celebrity funeral. It was deeply emotional, honest, and for those who noticed the small things, it was also very surprising. Ozzy Osbourne, the famous lead singer of Black Sabbath, died on July 22, 2025, at the age of 76. He passed away peacefully at his home in Buckinghamshire, with his wife Sharon and their children by his side. In a public statement, the family said that he had been suffering from several serious health problems for a long time. These included Parkinson's disease, spinal issues, and other complications related to aging. His last days were calm and quiet, with his loved ones staying close. There were no dramatic or painful final moments. His death was peaceful. Ozzy had been struggling with his health for years. In 2020, he told the world that he had been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. He also went through several spine surgeries after a serious fall in 2019. Even though he tried hard to recover, his movement stayed limited. By the beginning of 2025, people close to him said that he could no longer walk and used a wheelchair most of the time. He also needed constant care at home. In the last 2 months of his life, his health got worse quickly. According to people close to him, Ozzy said private goodbyes to some of his old friends and longtime music partners in June. It was his way of letting go and preparing for the end in his own quiet, respectful way. Moments like these show that even someone as famous and powerful as Ozzy Osbourne faced the end with love, peace, and honesty. It wasn't just a sad goodbye, it was the closing of a truly unforgettable life. Ozzy Osbourne had been dealing with serious health problems for about 6 years. He once said that most people couldn't understand what he was going through. Just a few weeks before his death, he made his last public appearance at a farewell concert in his hometown of Birmingham on July 5th. It was more than just a concert, it was his way of saying goodbye. Though he performed while seated due to his health, he made it clear to the crowd that ending his career on his own terms was important to him. Many people had doubts about whether he would be able to finish the show, but he did. That performance had been carefully planned. His family was present and prepared in case anything went wrong. After the concert, Ozzy returned home and stayed out of the public eye until his passing. Before he died, Ozzy often spoke about how he wanted his funeral to be. He made it clear that he didn't want a sad or overly serious ceremony. He wanted people to laugh, enjoy themselves, have a drink, and play Black Sabbath music. He had even joked that if anyone cried too much, he'd come back and haunt them for being too boring. His wife, Sharon, had confirmed in interviews that Ozzy wanted a celebration of his life, not a day of mourning. According to close family members, Ozzy had helped plan parts of his own funeral. He had picked out the songs he wanted played, including his own hits and music that inspired him when he was young. He also asked for no traditional church service and didn't want anyone giving speeches that felt fake or overly polished. His message to the family was simple. Be honest, be real, and don't pretend. After his death, the Osbourne family didn't announce the news right away. They first shared it privately with close friends, former bandmates, and longtime colleagues. News outlets confirmed it later in the afternoon through an official statement. Within hours, fans began gathering outside his home in Buckinghamshire. Some brought flowers, others held old records, and many simply stood quietly as a sign of respect. On social media, people from all over the world posted messages and memories. Fellow musicians, celebrities, and lifelong fans all shared what Ozzy had meant to them and to rock music as a whole. While this public wave of grief was growing, Sharon started organizing a tribute event in Birmingham. She understood how much the city meant to her husband and was determined to make the tribute something he would have appreciated. Though the public tribute was being carefully put together, the personal side of Ozzy's farewell was kept private and under strict control by the family. They wanted to respect his wishes and make sure everything felt true to who he really was. A few days after Ozzy Osbourne passed away, the family held a private ceremony with only close relatives present. No photos or details were shared with the public, and everything was kept very quiet. This event followed Ozzy's personal wishes exactly. He had made it clear that he didn't want anything dramatic, just meaningful music, honest memories, and a peaceful goodbye. But even though this private gathering was kept out of the spotlight, what came next was much more public. On July 30th, 2025, the entire city of Birmingham came to a stop. What had been quietly planned for days became a massive public event, a funeral procession honoring Ozzy Osbourne's life. The route of the procession was carefully planned by his family, working with local officials, and included important places from Ozzy's past. It began in the Aston neighborhood, where he grew up, and moved through the streets toward Broad Street, where there's a bench with his name facing the Black Sabbath Bridge. Fans had started gathering hours before the motorcade began. By the time the black hearse appeared, thousands of people had filled the sidewalks. Many were holding signs or wearing shirts with Ozzy's face on them. Some people cried quietly while others clapped, shouted his name, and played his music through portable speakers. It felt more like a celebration than a mourning, just as Ozzy would have wanted. The roads were closed off by local police so that the motorcade could pass without any problems. Mounted police officers led the way, followed by a single black hearse carrying Ozzy's casket. The vehicle moved slowly through the streets, giving fans a chance to say goodbye. Many people threw flowers, notes, and personal items onto the road. One man tossed a pair of worn-out boots wrapped in plastic with a note that read, "You walked with us. Now rest." A woman held up an old vinyl record of Blizzard of Oz and cried silently. The city even installed temporary platforms at certain points along the route so that more people could get a good view. The largest one was set up near Villa Park, the stadium of Ozzy's favorite football team, Aston Villa. At that spot, fans sang the team anthem, and a local brass band played a slow version of Iron Man. The moment felt deeply emotional, like the city itself was saying goodbye to one of its own. As the hearse moved through the city center, people began chanting Ozzy's name in unison. The chanting wasn't planned. It started naturally and quickly spread. The sound echoed between the buildings, creating a powerful moment that felt more like a tribute to a folk hero than a rock star. To add to the atmosphere, streetlights were dimmed, and large screens showed old videos of Ozzy performing from the 1970s and 2000s. The Osbourne family did not walk in the procession. Instead, they followed in black cars with tinted windows. It was later confirmed that they had decided to stay in the background to give the people of Birmingham space to grieve and celebrate in their own way. They were present, but they didn't want to take the focus away from the public's tribute. Along the route, some vendors set up stands selling t-shirts, posters, and other Ozzy memorabilia. A few people criticized this for being too commercial, but most didn't mind. For many fans, this was their only chance to say goodbye, and they wanted to take something home to remember the day. As the procession neared its end by the Black Sabbath Bridge, the mood changed. The cheering stopped. People began singing softly. Even though it was still daylight, some lit candles. The city allowed flowers to be placed along the sidewalks, and soon the edges of the streets were filled with color. It became clear that this moment would live on in the memory of everyone who was there. Sanitation workers in Birmingham were asked not to clean up anything left behind after Ozzy Osbourne's public funeral for at least 48 hours. The city didn't want to erase what had just happened so quickly. This wasn't a royal ceremony or a state funeral. It was something entirely different. Part music tribute, part public gathering, and part deeply personal farewell. At times, the scene looked a bit chaotic. But that made it feel even more real. This was a city saying goodbye to someone it truly loved, using the things it knew best: music, noise, and raw, honest emotion. As the public part of the day ended, the Osbourne family made their way to one final private moment, one that meant more to them than anything else. At the very end of the funeral route stood the Black Sabbath Bridge, one of Birmingham's most well-known landmarks. This bridge, with its plaque and bench honoring Ozzy, had become a meaningful place over the years. It started as a fan tribute but was eventually embraced by the city. For Ozzy's family, It was the most important stop of the day. It was where they would say goodbye in their own way. Sharon Osbourne arrived first. She wore all black, with a simple string of pearls and large dark sunglasses. She walked slowly, surrounded by a quiet security team, and carried a bunch of purple flowers in one hand. Sharon had been Ozzy's partner through everything. His health struggles, his career highs and lows, and his personal challenges. You could tell this moment was emotional for her. As she reached the bench, she looked serious, almost fragile. She placed the flowers gently on the bench, took off her sunglasses, and stood there silently. People nearby noticed that her hands were shaking. Then, she touched the back of the bench and kept her hand there for several seconds before stepping back. It looked like something she had imagined doing for a long time, but hadn't rehearsed in real life until now. Their son Jack followed next. He placed a folded piece of paper on the bench and quietly walked away without looking back. Sources close to the family said it was a personal, handwritten letter to his dad. Jack has often talked about his close, sometimes chaotic relationship with Ozzy. This was his quiet goodbye, something just for him. Then came Kelly. She had stayed beside Sharon until then. She slowly walked over, sat next to the flowers, and gently touched the wood of the bench. She didn't say anything out loud, but after a few moments, she leaned forward and whispered something. No one could hear what she said, and she didn't stay long. She stood up and rejoined the rest of the family. She didn't cry, at least not visibly, but the emotion in that moment was heavy. Amy and Louis each stepped forward in their own time. They left their personal tributes too. Every family member wore something meaningful. Kelly had round, purple-tinted glasses, just like her father used to wear. Jack had a silver cross on his jacket. Amy wore a small bat pin, and Louis had a tie with tiny purple skulls. Every detail was connected to Ozzy in some way. They didn't make speeches or try to get attention. Everything was quiet and respectful. The whole visit lasted about 10 minutes. Once they were ready, the security team behind them slowly began to move. But just before they left, Sharon turned around and looked back at the bench one more time. That final look, caught in a photo, said more than any words could. It summed up the whole day. While the public had their loud, emotional tribute, the family chose something softer and more private. There were no microphones, no big announcements. Just them, a simple bench, and their memories, many of which they couldn't put into words. The Osbournes quietly walked away from the bridge without talking to the media or stopping to speak to fans. That moment wasn't meant to be shared with the world. It was personal, just for them. Even with cameras flashing and reporters nearby, they managed to keep the goodbye private. But there was something else, something only a few people noticed at first. It wasn't until photos started appearing online that people saw something unusual. At first, most of the attention was on the size of the crowd, the procession, and the location. But then, close-up pictures started going around on social media and in the news. In those photos, Sharon Osbourne was seen wearing a thin gold chain around her neck. Hanging from it was something small but meaningful, Ozzy's wedding ring. This wasn't just any ring. According to people close to the family, it wasn't the ring from their wedding in 1982. It was the one Ozzy gave her during their vow renewal in 2017. That year had been difficult for them. There had been public stories about infidelity, and the couple had temporarily separated. But later, they held a private ceremony in Las Vegas where they renewed their vows, celebrating 35 years of marriage. That ring came to represent more than just love. It stood for survival, forgiveness, and lasting commitment. Seeing the ring on Sharon's necklace was like a silent message. It reminded everyone that their relationship had been through many challenges but stayed strong all the way to the end. Sharon didn't talk about the ring or point it out, but she didn't hide it either. That's what made it so powerful. It was a small, emotional detail that surprised people and made a big impression. People close to the family said Sharon had planned to wear the ring as soon as Ozzy passed away. She told someone in her circle that wearing the ring was the only way she could make it through the day. It gave her something physical to hold on to, something that made the pain feel a little lighter. She didn't want to give a speech, didn't want to walk behind the hearse, and didn't want to pose for photos. But wearing that ring was something she wasn't willing to skip. At the same time, Jack Osbourne's actions during the event caught people's attention too. He stayed very close to Sharon throughout the day. Several times, he gently held her arm or stepped in to shield her from photographers. In one video, he was seen adjusting her coat when the wind blew. In another, he softly reached out to steady her as she paused, placing his hand near hers without speaking. Later, insiders revealed that Jack had taken on a protective role in the final weeks of Ozzy's life. He had even moved into a guest house on the family's property so he could be close during his father's last days. After Ozzy passed, Jack handled many of the difficult tasks, like working with city officials in Birmingham and coordinating with extended family. Even though Sharon was the one most often seen in public, Jack was the one making sure everything behind the scenes was taken care of. Friends said he didn't do it because he had to. He did it because he knew his mother needed someone strong by her side. Kelly Osbourne was also present, but she stayed back from the spotlight. She looked deeply affected, and the cameras caught her expressions throughout the day. She didn't speak to the press or share anything online at the time. Her silence said everything. She seemed heartbroken, showing the kind of grief that words couldn't fully express. The day after Ozzy Osbourne's funeral, Kelly Osbourne shared a quiet but powerful tribute. Instead of making a speech or writing a long post, she uploaded a single photo of a vintage microphone with the caption, "Silence says more." Many fans understood this as a personal message to her father, the man who not only gave her life but also inspired her own journey in music. That simple image carried deep meaning, more than any long post or interview ever could. The most emotional moments from the funeral weren't the big public displays. Instead, it was the small things that truly moved people. Sharon Osbourne wore a thin gold chain around her neck, and on it was Ozzy's wedding ring. But it wasn't just any ring, it was the one from their vow renewal ceremony in 2017. That second ring had become a symbol of everything they had survived as a couple, including difficult times and public struggles. Sharon never talked about it, never pointed to it, but she didn't try to hide it either. It was her quiet way of showing that their love had lasted through it all, right until the very end. Jack Osbourne also stood out during the entire procession. He stayed close to his mother all day, making sure she was protected and supported. At times, he guided her through crowds, kept photographers at a distance, and made sure she was okay. One video clip even showed him adjusting her coat when the wind picked up. Those who know the family said that in Ozzy's final weeks, Jack had moved into a guest house on the family property just to be closer. After his father passed, he took care of much of the planning, including working with city officials and handling family arrangements. He did it not because he had to, but because he knew his mother wouldn't be able to do it alone. Kelly, on the other hand, stayed mostly in the background during the funeral events. She didn't speak to reporters, and she didn't post anything on social media that day, except for the photo of the microphone. Cameras caught her expressions, and she looked emotionally drained, but she remained quiet. The combination of Sharon's ring, Jack's quiet support, and Kelly's silence created an unforgettable picture of love, grief, and loyalty. After the funeral ended, tributes for Ozzy poured in from around the world. Rock legends, fans, and old friends shared memories and stories. Though the city of Birmingham had already said its goodbyes, the reactions from the music world added even more depth to the farewell. Tony Iommi, Ozzy's longtime bandmate from Black Sabbath, called him irreplaceable and shared a photo of them together from their last tour. Geezer Butler, the band's bassist, chose to grieve privately and didn't speak to the media. He later posted a short message thanking fans for keeping Ozzy's legacy alive. Other musicians also spoke out. James Hetfield from Metallica described Ozzy as a blueprint for heavy music. Axl Rose, who rarely comments on public events, shared a heartfelt story about seeing Black Sabbath perform as a teenager and how it changed his life. Lars Ulrich said Ozzy's death felt like the end of an era for the rock world. Back in Birmingham, the city's mayor issued a statement recognizing Ozzy's cultural impact, and the city council announced plans for a permanent mural in the Aston neighborhood, where Ozzy had grown up. Fans continued to visit the Black Sabbath bridge, leaving flowers, candles, and messages. The city even told cleanup crews not to remove anything for several days, giving people more time to pay their respects. In other parts of the world, fans created their own tributes. In Los Angeles, people gathered outside the Rainbow Bar and Grill, playing Ozzy's songs and lighting candles. In Tokyo, fans displayed hand-drawn portraits of him near Tower Records. In Sao Paulo, graffiti artists painted a mural with Ozzy's face and lyrics from Crazy Train. The Osbourne family chose not to speak to the media after the funeral. There were no interviews or statements, just silence. People close to them said this was on purpose. They felt that everything that needed to be said had already been expressed, both in the public procession and in their private farewell. Ozzy's voice, his face, and his influence was still everywhere, on shirts, on signs, and in the music playing in streets around the world. Though the funeral had ended, Ozzy Osbourne's presence continued to echo. Insiders shared that the family plans to hold one final private ceremony soon, away from cameras and crowds, to say goodbye to the man they loved. Not the legend, but the person behind it all. No official statement has been released, but people close to the Osbourne family say that a private farewell for Ozzy Osbourne is being planned. These plans were reportedly set up even before the public funeral took place. The quiet gathering will happen in Buckinghamshire, possibly at a small private chapel near the family's estate. Unlike the public tribute in Birmingham, this ceremony is not meant to be a large or formal event. It will only include immediate family, close friends, and a few trusted people from Ozzy's inner circle. Sharon Osbourne is said to be organizing everything herself, making sure it matches Ozzy's final wishes. Those who knew him well say Ozzy didn't want a second funeral that felt like a show or public performance. He wanted something real, peaceful, and simple. The date of the service is being kept secret, and it's likely that guests will only be told shortly before it happens. There won't be any printed programs, no formal dress code, and no planned speeches. Just a true goodbye in the way Ozzy wanted. Each family member is expected to contribute in their own way. Jack Osbourne is reportedly preparing to read from The Prophet, a book Ozzy often mentioned in conversations with his family. Kelly Osbourne might sing a short piece from the song Changes, which she once performed with her father, though this hasn't been confirmed. Amy, who generally keeps a low public profile, may bring a handwritten note or personal keepsake to place with the casket. Lewis, who has always stayed away from the spotlight, is helping Sharon behind the scenes and is remaining close to her throughout the process. After the service, the burial will happen right away. Sources say Ozzy will be laid to rest on private land near the family's home. He had made it very clear that he didn't want to be buried in a public cemetery or anywhere that could become a tourist spot. Instead, he wanted a quiet place where his family could visit him in peace, without crowds or media attention. There are no signs that this private farewell will be recorded or photographed. In fact, the family has made strict rules. No cameras, no press, and no exceptions. This moment is just for them, far away from the spotlight that followed Ozzy Osbourne throughout his life and career. So while the public funeral in Birmingham was moving and meaningful, it's this private farewell that truly honors the man behind the legend. It's about family memory, and a final goodbye that reflects who Ozzy really was. Not just a rock icon, but a father, husband, and deeply loved person.